I'm done pretending. All right. I'm done pretending. And I'm not saying it's wrong to pretend. You could pretend anything you want in this life. I think if you want to push any narrative, you could do that. You know, no matter what you say, you don't have to fully believe things you say if majority of the people are saying the same things as you. For example, if you say Anderson Silva's the GOAT, GSP's the GOAT, you could say that, guys. If you think Ilia Topuria is top 5 all time, or prior to the Justin Gaethje fight, he was even the best of all time, you could say that. If you think Islam's the GOAT, you could say that. And a lot of those things are justifiable if you give examples. But I think we all know at the end of the day, the greatest fighter of all time, this, like, regardless of sport, is Khabib Nurmagomedov. You know that, and I know that, but we're not gonna push that narrative. There's even people in the world saying, nah, he's not even top 10 because his resume. Like, we have to stop doing something where we lie to ourselves, one, and then two, we have to stop comparing people to Khabib Nurmagomedov. Ilia Topuria is a great fighter, guys. I watched him go in there and lose to Justin Gaethje because he probably needed to make some adjustments in his game plan to win that fight. I watched Hamza Chimaev go in there, lose to Sean Strickland. Could the weight cut have something to do with it? Sure. Did he look like he was gassed out after a certain round and like laid over himself? Sure. But he lost there, even though it was a competitive fight and went to split decision and arguably could have went either way. He still lost in there because he wasn't good enough on that night, in my opinion, to beat Sean Strickland. Now, there's fighters who are going to lose in life. Dare I say, every fighter is going to lose in life. Matter of fact, I'm going to say this. There's not a single undefeated fighter in the UFC today who's going to remain undefeated by the end of their career. And I could say that, and I don't got to worry about nothing. Let me say this, at the championship level, I'm sure this could be an undefeated fighter who's like, I'm going to walk away from the sport, maybe like a Zabit Magomedsharipov situation. But I don't think it's possible to be undefeated. Stop acting like Khabib is normal. Stop acting like Khabib is comparable. I'm done comparing Khabib with other fighters because you can't compare fighters to somebody who's too great that exceeds the normal skill of MMA. Let's talk about Khabib Nurmagomedov. And by the end of this video, whether you agree with me or not, you're going to agree with me. I'm saying that in the sense of you're going to agree with everything I'm saying because everything I'm saying is factually truthful. But what you might not agree with, you're going to be like, okay, just because he was the best at everything doesn't mean he was the greatest of all time, because I think to be the greatest of all time, you have to stick around long enough for you to lose. Cool. Let's get into this, guys, because I'm starting to see a lot of things about just how good Khabib is. And I really couldn't tell you how good Khabib is because he's almost too good to a point where it doesn't make logical sense in the human mind. Let's get into this video. No more stalling, no more glazing. Whoa, I said no more glazing. Get ready to sit through the craziest glaze you ever heard in your entire life. First and foremost, great fighters will always fall short in comparison, guys. I don't care who you're comparing with. Like, I don't care who this guy is better than Khabib is. You can't compare him to Topuria. You can't compare him to Hamza. You can't compare him to Islam. These are current day fighters. You can't compare him to Jones, GSP, Silva, etc. You can name any fighter in the UFC. They can't be comparable to Khabib on paper because how Khabib fought, how Khabib looked, the Khabib success in general can't be compared. The only thing you can compare with some of these guys is like, oh, well, Khabib never went up in weights and became the great and proved himself. But even the whole weight difference thing could be diminished when you guys realize that typically when you go up in weight, there's something called lighterman skill, which I do think has a certain truth to it to an extent. But I will say Khabib, if he had to go up and fight Usman, I don't think he'd have as much success as he'd have against some of these other guys. Khabib was too smart of a fighter to do that, in my opinion. I know he has no interest. They were friends and they wouldn't have fight under the same manager, all that bullshit. Listen, if they wanted to fight, they would have fought. Let me just say that. But I really feel like most of these guys, they still fall significantly short to the comparison of Khabib because how good Khabib was as a mixed martial artist in comparison to them. Let's get into the thing that I know most, or like if not 99% of the people in the comments are going to say to diminish Khabib. They're going to talk about the resume because it's so easy to point out a champion with 3 title defenses and be like, that's not enough. But let's be real, 3 title defenses is more than Alex Pereira. It's more than a lot of these people that everyone's saying are better than Khabib. It's more than 3 title defenses is actually pretty above average. Like, a lot of people will get the title and pull a Sean Strickland or pull a DDP. They were defended a couple times, but it's hard for you to get 3 defenses, especially against a very stacked weight class. Let's not act like lightweight in 2017 wasn't the most stacked weight class with Khabib as a number one contender, interim champion. I believe was who? Oh, Tony Ferguson. Champion was Conor McGregor. You know, we had Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Edson Barboza was in the top 5 as well. That was the best division of all time, arguably. Khabib fought in that division, and guess what? Khabib fought all those guys I just mentioned for the most part. And guess what? When Khabib fought those guys, he nearly killed them. Let's get into his resume, guys, real quick. His resume is criminally underrated. First of all, prime Dustin. Dustin Poirier was on a win streak with these specific names before he fought Khabib. Max Holloway, Alvarez, Justin Gaethje, and Anthony Pettis. He fought 4 of these people directly prior to fighting Khabib Nurmagomedov. When Khabib fought Dustin Poirier didn't win a single round against Khabib, and Dustin Poirier looked completely out of his depth, and Dustin Poirier got drowned in there very easily. Next, someone who else is great on his resume is prime Justin Gaethje, who nearly killed Tony Ferguson on the longest active win streak in lightweight prior. Nearly killed him in there. Beat him like so bad that we never thought it was possible to see. Khabib beat Justin Gaethje every round, arguably. You know, I'm saying arguably. We're going to talk about the round situation of Khabib and Nurmagomedov and how much rounds he's lost. But he beat him every single round, and he drowned Justin Gaethje. So not only was Justin Gaethje in his prime and was beating up prime people like Tony Ferguson prior to this fight, Justin Gaethje is the champion of the UFC today. Now you're starting to see something where we could argue this might be one of the best aged resumes in UFC history. And Justin Gaethje isn't in his prime anymore. I hear people say, dude, Justin Gaethje's in his prime, man. Justin Gaethje is definitely not in his fighting prime. Why is he in his prime? Because people do something with recency bias where they see a fighter win and they be like, oh, this fighter's in his prime. People said it after Charles beat Max Holloway. Charles is not in his prime either. He's not. He just beat Max Holloway because of stylistic difference. Styles make fights is a true narrative that people don't understand. Justin Gaethje isn't in his prime at the age of 40. Justin Gaethje just beat Ilia Topuria because he forced him in a war, and Ilia Topuria prior has not been to a war, period. You know, Justin Gaethje tried to force Khabib in a war. It's just there's a difference in skill when you talk about Ilia Topuria, who's looked at as one of the most skilled fighters in UFC history, and Khabib Nurmagomedov. Also, he beat a double champion McGregor. Before his only MMA fight before Khabib was Eddie Alvarez, where he unified the belts, became double champion, and then he went and boxed Floyd Mayweather, you know, which people look at as a bad thing, but no, he went in there and stood toe-to-toe with one of the greatest boxers, if not the greatest boxer of our time, ever. Then he comes back, fully training takedown defense, and you could definitely see from the fight that Conor was actually one of the best at defending takedowns when it came to Khabib, you know, fully ready. That was the best Conor's ever looked, and no one could deny that. Conor McGregor has never looked better than how he looked against Khabib Nurmagomedov. Defending takedowns unlike he ever has, you know, looked comfortable on the feet. You know, Khabib just had to show levels because Khabib also could strike and stand on the feet. Khabib was special when he beat double champ McGregor. People try to act like McGregor wasn't at his best. You can't point to a fight where McGregor ever looked better. And if you do try to point to a fight like Jose Aldo, a fight that ended in 13 seconds, you can't look at that like that's a domination. That's not a domination. That was a punch that landed. That's not his best performance. He looked the best physically. And his endurance even looked the best against Khabib. There's nothing that he looked. Like I said, you can't point to one Conor fight he looked better. And if you do, I guarantee the opposition in front of him just wasn't Khabib, so he might have looked cleaner in the performance. That does not equate to the best version, the most well-rounded version of Conor we ever seen. We saw the best version of Conor McGregor when he fought Khabib. Still went in there and nearly died in there. Prime RDA. People don't understand. RDA was on a crazy win streak before he fought Khabib. Lost to Khabib. After that, went on a crazy win streak again and winning the belt. RDA was virtually untouchable. You take away RDA's loss from Khabib, he'll look like the greatest lightweight of all time. He looked like one of the greatest fighters of all time because before Khabib beat him, he looked damn near unbeatable. And that's just the truth of the situation. But people don't understand that. And RDA is also one of the most well-rounded people in UFC history. But people are going to look at you sideways and be like, he never fought a well-rounded opposition in his life. But they don't actually believe what they're saying. They just say that because that's what other people around them are saying. So they're trying to push that agenda as well. He beat RDA, who's one of the most well-rounded. I also put MJ, Michael Johnson, as you guys know, who's able to beat people like Dustin Poirier and catch people because he has heavy hands, you know. In a very unpredictable sport, someone like MJ is not an easy task for you, especially on your resume. Also beat Barboza, who, like I said, was actually top 3 in 2017 in the weight class ahead of people like Gaethje and Dustin Poirier because he's very well-rounded. Beat people like Aya Quinto, who people are going to laugh at and say that's an easy win when he's on a 5-fight win streak prior. So it wasn't like he just fought a random bum. He fought someone on the longest win streak who was able to accept the fight after Tony Ferguson pulled out of that fight. Shit happens. You can't fault Khabib for beating someone on a win streak because someone else pulled out. That's not how shit works. Neither here or there, guys. I just want to talk about how underrated that resume really is. And still to this day, it's still aging good. And keep in mind, the people who are still fighting this day are around the age of 40 if you're fighting in Khabib's era, you know, for the most part. around the age of 40, like high 30s or even mid 30s. But those people are not in their fighting prime. Khabib beat them in their fighting prime, but they're still able to win belts outside of their prime. Just shows how good Khabib Nurmagomedov is. Want to get to a different narrative too. He doesn't lose rounds. Now, why this isn't normal? People don't understand how abnormal this really is. Like, you know someone's good when they're like, well, how is he good when he lost a round to this guy? We don't do that. We don't talk about rounds lost with Ilya. Has Ilya ever won a first round in his life? Lost to Jai Herbert, lost to Vogue, lost to Max, lost to bro. Has Ilya ever won? Like, we can't talk about rounds. Has John Jones lost arguable fights to Reyes, lost multiple rounds to Gustafsson, lost to DC in a couple rounds. We can't talk about rounds lost as if it's not like that's a normal thing. People don't win every round. The only arguable rounds he lost to was Justin Gaethje in the first round, which the judges were split in it. I will say that. And the only round on paper that he's actually lost was Conor McGregor in the third round. If you guys don't remember that round, is where Khabib didn't shoot a single takedown, smacked Conor in the face, and was doing nothing but standing and training with Khabib or with McGregor the whole time. Was known as the world's greatest MMA striker. That was after McGregor went ahead and had boxing too with Mayweather. So his striking was very crisp that fight, but he was getting smacked in the third round by Khabib, who didn't shoot a takedown to prove a point, And I thought Khabib won that round as well, but maybe I'm just saying that because I realized the visual of a wrestler striking, even nowadays that you see it a lot, if it's a competitive fight around but a wrestler was striking and they didn't wrestle, we tend to be like, all right, well, I guess the striker won that round. If you look at that round, I'm telling you guys right now, you're going to realize how arguable it really was. Khabib was having his way with Conor on the feet primarily. Not to mention, Conor also got dropped in that fight by Khabib, who's known as a pretty mid striker, which is just not true. So it's not normal to talk about, well, he lost this round, Not only we're talking about losing rounds, he's never bled in the octagon. This guy's so weird. Like, that's so weird. That's not normal. Not losing rounds isn't normal. Not bleeding isn't normal. You go against people like Justin Gaethje. Do you see the damage Justin Gaethje puts on people? You're the only one this is the only person Justin Gaethje couldn't make bleed in a round a fight that goes multiple rounds. Crazy how good it really was, but people don't actually want to talk about this because they're not used to seeing something like this. So they kind of just brush it off like it's normal because it's Khabib in his fight style. He's a primary wrestler. That happens. Islam can't do what Khabib does, which brings us to my next point, guys. Same fight style every time. Surely his opposition is expecting this. It's not like Khabib goes in there and has the skills of Islam where if my wrestling's not working, I'm a strike like I did against Volkanovski and Dustin Poirier. I was forced into some wars. There's no, if this doesn't work, I'm going to do that. And I know people are going to bring up the Tibial fight, which, by the way, all three judges scored that 30-27 for Khabib. And let's be real, Khabib did win every round. He just didn't score with his takedowns, but he still won off of pressure and off of volume and off of takedown attempts as well into strikes. But neither here or there, I want to talk about how he has the same fight style every time. Ilia Topuria couldn't fight Gaethje the way he wanted to or usually does. I actually think, looking back at that, Ilia Topuria, who is a decent grappler, needs to grapple more. But he didn't. It led to him losing. Hamza can't fight the same every time because sometimes he could get stuff like he did against Sean Strickland and then force to stand and lose. But when you have the same fight style every time, and pretty much the narrative is, if you stuff these takedowns, I could just make you stand and I could put a bad beating on you. But it turns out it's not easy to stuff his takedowns, and he's going to keep coming at you even if you do stuff his takedowns. So how could someone with the same fight style every time not find some kind of adversity and not lose rounds and still win every fight? That's what's not normal about Khabib. Other fighters in the world can't do this. You can't point to any fighter who could go in with the same style every time and win. Sean Strickland has the same fight style every time. That's why people like DDP would destroy him and nearly kill him in 50-45 him in a rematch. You know why? Because DDP's seen him already, seen that style, so he's ready for it. Everyone's watching Khabib fight, guys. They're training. They're specifically tailoring their training camp only to defend takedowns because they, in their head, they know because it hasn't happened, that if you stuff Khabib's takedowns, you can put it on him and just put a bad beating on him and break him. People are saying, oh, he's never seen his own blood, I'm going to make him see it. Well, you haven't made him see it, and no one has made him see it. Do you guys not realize how abnormal a fighter like this is and how we're never going to see a fighter like this again? Because how the hell what the hell do you mean you have the same fight style every time, you're going to use it every time, but you're going to win every time and no one can stop you every time? It doesn't sound normal, does it, when I'm saying it out loud? But everyone's normalizing that. They're normalizing Khabib in a weird sense, which brings us to my next narrative. You can't really humanize him. You can't, and it sounds like it's crazy, Glaze, but how do you humanize something like this? And why are we trying to normalize Khabib's existence? Like this is an unpredictable sport, But every single outcome was very predictable because everyone's saying, oh, anything could happen. And it's true. Look at what Strickland did to Hamza. Look how Justin Gaethje beat Ilya. Like this. Look how Usman lost to Leon Edwards. This is very true. It's a very unpredictable sport. But for some reason, every single time Khabib was booked for a fight, we all kind of knew the outcome. Even if we didn't know, by the first round when you see the takedown shot, we're like, oh, well, here we go again. So in a very unpredictable sport, someone this good to make it very predictable, you know, with the same fight style every time. His opposition training night in, night out, just for this stopping the takedowns and beating him up on the feet, making him bleed at least. But they're not even winning minutes of the fight. He's not losing minutes of the fight. He's not losing rounds. This guy's abnormal. So something I'll never understand fully is why we try to just make it seem like Khabib's like it's normal. We try to be like, oh, well, he could have been top 5 or number 1 if this. Blah, blah. Shut up. No, like actually shut up, because we could have been top 1 if he would have. What do you mean he could have been what? Guys, if we're really talking about a GOAT list, I got to be honest. Sometimes I want to leave Khabib out of it, because how can I compare Khabib to anyone else? It just doesn't make sense logically. He's the best fighter ever. His resume was crazy. He was in arguably the best division of all time at the best time of all time, and he beat all those people in very one-sided fashion. And on top of that, he fought the same way every time. And it was a very fun fight style. He's very unique to himself, the ground and pound, the smashing of the faces, something we haven't seen before. Someone that dominant who doesn't bleed and doesn't lose rounds, and we're trying to look at the GOAT list and say things like, well, he would have been number 1 of this. Shut your stupid mouth. He's the best fighter. He's the greatest fighter of all time, and it's pretty obvious. I don't even like talking and trying to compare, because I do fall victim to this too. I try to be like, yeah, well, this guy's surpassing him and stuff, blah, blah, blah. I get that. Off accolades, I think Islam Makhachev could be the one and only to pass him, because Islam, he's already double champ. Yeah. It's just that, like, we can never say Islam is as good as Khabib, if that makes sense. We could say he's more accomplished, but we can't really say he's as good, because when you think about the things good, you think about things like never losing rounds and never bleeding and going out there and dominating every time. Islam can't say that no matter what happens. And no fighter in UFC history will ever be able to say that. You can't name a fighter even closer to dominance. You hear who's the most dominant fighter, you hear casuals say things like Anderson Silva and GSP. But even in their prime and stuff, they're getting caught. They're losing. They're having competitive fights. Like, they're dominant in the sense that they could dominate with specific fight styles. But once Anderson Silva seen a wrestler like Chael Sonnen, that dominance kind of went to shit. You know, when Khabib goes into there against a well-rounded grappler like RDA, he'll out-grapple him and beat him at what they're best at. You know, when he goes against a striker who has knockout power, he's not worried about that, and he's even dropping those people like Conor McGregor. We can't humanize someone like this in the sense that he's too good to a point where we're trying to act like it's a little bit normal, or it's not weird that he doesn't lose rounds, he doesn't bleed, and he makes every fight one-sided. We can't be normalizing that, because then we look at people like Ilya and we're harder on people like Ilya when they do lose a fight. Oh my God, Ilya lost the fight. Boo-hoo. Oh my God, Hamza lost the fight. Guys, losing's so normal, and it's a part of the game. Like, it's not normal winning every fight. Like, even if you're in your prime. Ilya's in his prime. Hamza's in his prime. They're losing fights, guys. They're losing fights. And they can't go in with the same fight style every single time like Khabib, or they're going to lose fights. Exhibit A, look how they fought when they try to use the same fight style, and then someone stuffs their takedowns and they change up everything like Hamza did, and starts to feel more comfortable striking and doing weird shit like that. Or not trusting their cardio or something. That's why I don't like how Khabib gets compared to other people, because when you start comparing him to other people, it makes the other people look bad. It makes you seem like, oh, well, these guys aren't as good as I thought. No, Ilya's great. Hamza's great. A lot of these undefeated fighters prior to them losing are great. Even after them losing, they're great. Why do we not think they're all that in a bag of potatoes? Because we look at people like Khabib and say, just how good is Khabib? Because Khabib walked through a prime Justin Gaethje while Ilya Taporia went life or death with him. Ilya's not bad. Justin Gaethje is better than people think, maybe, but it just comes down to the principle that Khabib Nurmagomedov is better than every single person who ever exists on this planet Earth when it comes to fighting in mixed martial arts. And you know that as much as I know that, but the reason you don't want to give Khabib credit is because you're going to make excuses like, oh, well, he left too early, or he should have stayed till he lost. He did leave he left at like 32, 33. Yeah, that's early given the situation because his father passed away. But you can't deny what a great career that was, period. If he were to stay, people try to say things like, eventually Tony Ferguson would have got him. Even after losing to Gaethje, I said Tony would have got him. Or Charles Oliveira would have got him. You know, who we watched lose to people like Islam. Or we watched lose to people like Who else did Charles lose to? Islam and Armin Sarukian, another primary wrestler. You know, the truth of the matter is, no matter who, if he were to stick around, the people we see him fighting against, it would have been the same result, probably even worse in a more one-sided fashion. So we got to start being objective when we look at Khabib and understand that no matter how long he stayed in the lightweight division, it would have literally just been Khabib as champion, Islam as number one contender, and they just keep sending people down. It would be so annoying. It'd be the most frustrating thing to watch ever. Khabib would have reigned no matter how long he stayed. He's that good to do that. So the whole narrative that Charles would have been the guy to beat him, stop it. Ilya would have been the guy to beat him. I'm sure you guys know it at this point. Stop it. No lightweight would have been the guy to beat Khabib Nurmagomedov. The only one with a chance is Islam Makhachev, and guess what? They would never have fought each other. So you guys need to come to the realization that Khabib Nurmagomedov is better than everyone you know. He's the greatest fighter of all time. Whether you want to reward him and give him the acknowledgement as the greatest fighter of all time is not going to change the fact that on paper, there will never be someone else 29-0. There will never be someone else undefeated in the UFC career. I'm telling you right now, there will never be another undefeated prospect who retires undefeated, even if they retire at 30. Ilya Taporia was talking about retiring at 29, 30. You guys are forgetting that. He couldn't even reach that age that Khabib was undefeated till. You know why? Because it's not roses and bubbles. Khabib went in there with war starters, with warriors, people with great takedown defense like Justin Gaethje, like Dustin Poirier, you know, like RDA, and beat them with the same style every single time. Khabib Nurmagomedov exceeds people's expectations, but we still try to hold him to a different standard. The truth of the matter is he's the greatest of all time. You know it as much as I do. So we got to stop comparing these youthful people to Khabib Nurmagomedov because there'll never, ever be one like him again. I want you guys to understand that, so I had to make a video on that. I never thought I'd make a glazed video of Khabib in 2026, but it comes to the point where his resume just keeps aging good, and people are starting to come to the realization that Khabib Nurmagomedov is just the best thing to grace this octagon, and we have to give him his flowers because one of these days he's going to be out of here. And then the next generation going to be talking about him like a Muhammad Ali, except like this is actually a perfect fighter who went in there and was perfect and wasn't bleeding and never lost rounds. Khabib's what we dream of doing and what we dream of being if you want to be a fighter. Khabib Nurmagomedov is too good to not get glazed like this. Too good to not acknowledge Khabib Nurmagomedov is the greatest UFC fighter of all time. Let me know your thoughts down below. I'm actually curious. I want to hear like what people have to say about this down below. I'm sure it's going to be the same things. Well, you think his resume is good, but I don't. You think he never bled, but who cares about bleeding? He never lost, but who cares about You're going to just say that. But at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying is true. That's it for me. God bless. 2, 3.